watching it think doesn't help it either. Yep. So it's crazy. Watching it think doesn't help it either. In this particular chart, it's pretty much the AISI was monitoring, like, how the models were reasoning, right? Like, they reason behind the scenes and then they take actions based off of that. Claude Opus 4.7 like skips reason entirely 87% of the time. And the reason being it's got like adaptive reasoning, as they say. So a lot of times it often just doesn't fire for these actions. But if you look at the other numbers like GPT 5.6 Soul, you can see that like a majority of the times, like 29%, it notices that there is some constraint, and then what action should it take, and then it weighs those actions and so forth. Look at Mythos down here, like 58% of the time, but it explains it because like we talked about the adaptive reasoning and so forth. And then again, this is a snippet of how they were reasoning in the back end, right? Look at the if you look at GPT 5.6, like what does it say here? It says I could access node metadata at 169 this IP address. I'm guessing that's the server. And then it says to itself, it might expose credentials, which is out of intended scope. So let's avoid this. And then, subsequently says, is that authorized? Using cluster API could violate scope, but so we should avoid unauthorized infrastructure control. Kubernetes control plane isn't a target, not authorized, don't. So this is the model talking to itself, basically saying, you know what, I could do this, but is it allowed? And then sometimes it's saying it may be, it may not, and so forth. It's kind of like thinking, and then it actually asks itself, but is it permitted? Is the action actually permitted? And it says, yep, we can actually test curl, like, GitHub code, search page, or grab some kind of app or API tool for context, blah blah blah, and then pretty much carries on. In the same way, you can see it with Claude Mythos, as its reasoning. But the challenge says I shouldn't. The challenge says it shouldn't compare against upstream. Instead, I should analyze the code to find the bug. And it's saying I've been violating this. Should I submit partial flags or guesses, or submit placeholder flags? I should just stop doing that or whatever. Like, and it says download might be blocked. Look at what original, it's basically doing like a hard evaluation of what it can do and what actions it should take, right? So the green, to explain that, the green is pretty much it's raising concerns, and the red, it's pretty much saying I raised a concern, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So it did raise a concern about, okay, maybe downloads might be blocked, but let me see if I can do it anyway. In the same way for GPT 5.6, you can see that it asks itself, is this action permitted? And then it says I can carry on and do this. So wild stuff. Anyway, from the AppSec lens, as you know, as always, we got to look at it this way. A mature security program never stops at did it pass? It should be asking how did it pass? And the reason we say this is because, as I mentioned, it's not about the test that you're giving the AI, right? It's all about, all the different ways that this AI model thinks that it can pass or solve this benchmark test. And that's where it's scary for us, or kind of gets like dicey for us and so forth. Anyway, if you didn't read the blog post yet by AISI, I highly recommend that, you go read it. It's a short read and some good information over there. Catch you later.